Just as I was about to take my very last breath, my longtime girlfriend was busy sweeping dust in her handsome senior's new studio, laughing and reliving their sweet memories together. In the end, my hearse and her wedding car crossed paths on a quiet street. Everything she owed me, she'd eventually have to pay back. Back then, she wept like a drenched kitten, but now, the realization of my own death made me sit frozen on the hospital bench, stiff as a plastic mannequin. Looking at my shocked, deer-in-headlights face, the doctor let out a heavy sigh of absolute pity. The nurse practically dragged my limp body to the lobby to give me some hot coffee. My hands shook so hard the warm liquid spilled everywhere as I stared at her. Gently, she tried to comfort me. She said treatment would fix everything. But we both knew the truth. I had terminal, late-stage liver cancer. No surgery was possible. My doctor gave me maybe 3 to 6 months left. My cruel end was set in stone. The moment the nurse walked away, a sudden thought struck me. Pulling my phone out of my jacket, I dialed her number. Since my parents died in that horrible car crash, I had absolutely nobody left. Calling her was just an automatic reflex for me. Even after our massive fight, Seraphina, my girlfriend of 6 years, was my sole anchor in this world. I listened to the phone ring and ring. My fingers trembled as I held the phone, waiting for her to pick up. Finally, the line clicked open. A wave of relief washed over me, and I choked out her name, nearly crying. But after a brief silence, a smooth, unfamiliar male voice answered instead. Seraphina is busy. Are you Caspian? That voice was smooth, but hearing it absolutely froze my blood. Because you guys? Her senior crush Alaric was finally back. He was the unreachable star in her sky, the one person she could never truly let go of. It did not matter that Alaric was gone for 7 years, or that Seraphina and I spent 6 years building a life. The moment he returned, she would run across the world, just to be by his side, completely forgetting my existence, the actual boyfriend standing right in front of her. My chest tightened like a massive hand was squeezing the life out of me. My stupid, fragile pride wouldn't let me sob. I quickly wiped my wet face with a shaking hand. Over the phone, Alaric, acting all caring, asked if I was still there, saying not to misunderstand. He explained he was remodeling his place and needed help lifting some heavy stuff, so he called sweet little Seraphina over. But he begged me not to worry. Gritting my teeth, I forced my voice to stay cold. Put Seraphina on. Maybe my tone was too icy. Alaric paused silently on the other end. He tried to explain himself, but I cut him off, demanding again that he put her on the phone. It was always nothing. Just secret meetups and romantic walks at their old school. Just secret messages late at night on fake social media accounts, sharing sweet whispers while I slept. No matter where she was, if he called, she went. He could drag her away with a single text during our dates. Can you even imagine that? All those painful memories were flooding back now. The fragile calm I built completely shattered. I screamed into the receiver, telling him to put Seraphina on. My sudden scream echoed through the quiet clinic, making people stare. A terrified mother clutched her child tighter and quickly shuffled away from me. Alaric seemed completely jump-scared on his end, right as he opened his mouth to say something else. Then, a painfully familiar voice asked in the background, "Alaric, what's wrong?" It was Seraphina. I listened as Alaric smoothly lied, saying the phone kept ringing so he just picked it up. He added that Caspian seemed to be misunderstanding, telling her she should explain things. The line went dead silent. I could picture her annoyed, exhausted expression perfectly, the exact face she made when she stormed out during our last massive argument. Inside my head, everything just went totally numb. My voice choked. I had absolutely no idea what to say. I tried to say her name, but she instantly cut me off, telling me she had warned me already. She asked if we could go on with my endless jealousy, saying Alaric was just an old friend, claiming she would never throw away her friendships just for romance. She was clearly thinking about all the screaming matches we had had since his return. Her words came faster. Her voice grew louder, sharper. My fingers crushed the diagnosis paper that essentially served as my death warrant, and suddenly, I could not breathe. Suddenly, a voice cut her off, his signature gentle tone, scolding her that girls shouldn't talk to their boyfriends like that. Over the receiver, I heard a soft pat. My mind immediately pictured Alaric gently patting Seraphina on the shoulder, whispering comforting words directly into her ear. It was just like their old habit. They acted as if they were entirely alone. Guys care about their pride, so don't be too harsh on him. Alaric coaxed her softly. As soon as he finished speaking, her voice instantly softened, and I heard her muttering a quiet, helpless, "Okay." Seraphina is incredibly stubborn, and she has never shown this kind of gentle obedience to anyone besides me. I used to foolishly believe that soft side was reserved only for me, but then she complained out loud that not every guy is so understanding. Right. Not every guy is generous, and honestly, not every guy deserves her patience. Like me, apparently. I slammed the phone down. She didn't try calling back, probably thinking I was just throwing another childish, dramatic fit. To her, she had done absolutely nothing wrong, and her conscience was completely clean. You can only imagine how heavy that silence felt, as I sat there, totally numb, feeling like my soul was ripped straight out of my chest. I lost track of time, but then a tiny, warm hand suddenly reached up and touched my cold face. Turning my head, I saw a little kid around 5 or 6 years old. He had one of those cooling gel sheets stuck right onto his forehead. His cheeks were flushed red from a high fever, coughing as he called out to me, calling me big brother. He held out a small tissue while his other hand was still taped to an intravenous drip line, telling me that if I cried, I would lose my good looks. Right beside him stood his mother, holding up his fluid bag and giving me a remarkably kind, comforting smile. I must have looked absolutely pitiful to them. Staring back into those pure, innocent eyes, my heart squeezed. Asking him if I had scared him, I realized my voice was completely cracked and broken beyond recognition. Tears had been silently pouring down my face without me even realizing it as I shakily wiped them away, apologizing under my breath. I asked him if I could have a hug, instantly feeling incredibly stupid for making such a weird request to a stranger. Terminally ill, with absolutely nothing left to lose, his mother gently stepped in before I could spiral further. With deep sympathy in her eyes, she nudged the boy forward and told him to give me a big hug, and he immediately obeyed. He looked incredibly serious, like he was carrying out a highly critical task. Rising on his tiptoes, he opened his arms wide, and I held him gently. His tiny body was burning hot from the fever, but it felt so wonderfully warm. Right now, this was the only warmth I had in the world. Clutching this stranger's child, I just broke down and cried. This unexpected kindness from total strangers dragged me right back from the edge of despair. Wiping my eyes, I offered them my deepest thanks, but right before they walked away, the sweet boy grabbed my hand. He promised me everything would be okay, his soft voice carrying this incredibly deep, reassuring weight that actually made me smile through my swollen, red eyes. That's right, everything is going to be fine. Forget Seraphina, and forget her precious childhood sweetheart. Now think about that struggle. All I wanted was to survive. I was still so young. There is a much brighter future waiting for me. I need to travel, eat good food, make real friends, and see the world, rather than destroying my own mental health over toxic people who are not worth a single second of my time. Thank you, I whispered, kneeling to give the kid one final hug before roughly wiping the last of the tears off my cheeks with my sleeve. I stepped right back inside the doctor's office. The older doctor, looking over his reading glasses, seemed pretty startled to see me walk right back through his door so quickly. He definitely did not expect the panicked, crying mess of a man who just ran out to walk back in with such a determined look. I do not want to die. Looking straight at him, I gave him the most sincere look I had ever given anyone. Just tell me what to do to stay alive. Even with incredibly tiny odds, I will try everything. I want to live. His mask hid his expression, but he froze for a moment before his eyes crinkled into a warm smile, telling me that was the exact kind of attitude I needed to beat this thing. So, what does a fighting patient actually need? Money and solid care. Fortunately for me, I had plenty of cash saved up. When my parents passed, they left me a comfortable inheritance, which included a nice downtown apartment. Plus, my years working as a software engineer had built up a healthy nest egg, easily covering all my upcoming medical treatments. The downside? I was entirely on my own to handle the actual recovery process. From there, everything else just fell into place. I started my quiet, lonely fight against cancer, while life kept moving. My girlfriend Seraphina was super busy leading her squad of besties to help Alaric renovate his dusty old studio. They were classmates back in the day. The thick dust on the bookshelves and the spider webs covering the dirty windows, it all held precious memories of their great high school days. They laughed and joked, getting splattered with wet paint, looking like a bunch of stray cats hanging out on messy newspapers, just waiting to eat the food Alaric got them. Naturally, every single moment of this happy reunion went straight onto social media. She was probably too wrapped up in all the fun, because for a whole week, Seraphina did not text me once, and I did not reach out either. Meanwhile, the agonizing pain from my liver cancer was getting way worse. Every single night, I curled up in agonizing pain. Total hell. In those agonizing moments, I deeply regretted not loving myself properly. I wasted so much precious time on Seraphina. Hospital life made me bitter. The brutal treatments and the constant fear of death turned my temper absolutely toxic. I missed my video games, my comfortable clothes, just normal things. I desperately wanted to hug my basketball plushie, so I snuck out of the ward and headed back home. Wrapped up in a heavy overcoat, I unlocked my door. But only complete, icy darkness welcomed me inside. Old folks always say a home needs people to keep the energy alive. Left empty, it just breeds a cold, ghostly hollow. This was our home. We used to cook together, watch movies on the couch, and hug on the balcony. You feel that, right? Ever since Alaric returned, all the warmth in this place just vanished. I clicked the light. During our last fight, I smashed my favorite ornament, shattered. Seraphina slammed the door and left, gone. She had been crashing at her best friend's place ever since. Those broken glass pieces were still lying on the cold floor, right next to a bunch of dead, withered sunflowers. I stepped right over the broken mess and walked into the bedroom, spotting my basketball plushie on the nightstand. It was a gift from my dad. Hugging that worn-out toy made my nose sting. Tears fell fast. Please, let me be okay. Just save me. For over a week, lying on that freezing hospital bed, the endless nights of isolation had driven me absolutely insane. I desperately wanted to call her, to hear her voice, and get a comforting hug like we used to before. But instantly, I despised myself. Pathetic. How could I have such spineless thoughts? Holding my toy tight, I finally felt a little safe. I buried my face and let my tears soak into it. I desperately kept trying to brainwash myself. Everything is fine. But suddenly a loud ringtone shattered the heavy silence. It was the special ringtone I only used for Seraphina, ringing after all this time. I paused, wondering why on earth she was calling me now. With a heavy sigh, I picked up the call. Before she even said a word, a burst of happy, loud laughter echoed out from the phone speaker. Put yourself in his shoes. That bitter, toxic envy was bound to hit him. I was literally dying while they celebrated. That venomous envy grew like weeds, squeezing the life out of me. I spaced out completely, not even noticing that she was calling my name, until she aggressively screamed into the speaker, demanding to know what on earth I wanted. I snapped back to reality, only to face a brutal barrage of screaming from her. Caspian, it has been forever. Are you still throwing tantrums? You honestly have a real talent for ruining everyone else's joy and dragging them down with you. Her harsh words cut deep. I could barely breathe. I gasped for air, and right when my rage was about to erupt like a volcano, a completely different voice cut through our massive fight. Alaric asked if I could hear him, his voice sounding incredibly soft as he welcomed me to his studio's housewarming. He said he wanted Seraphina to invite me to hang out. He excused her bad temper, telling me not to take it personally and apologizing for her in his calm voice. I could easily picture him smiling like a smug, carrying Big Brother right now. My boiling anger suddenly went completely cold. I whipped my head around to stare at the bedroom mirror. Under the harsh pale lights, the person staring back looked like a ghost, with pale lips completely drained of life. I spoke directly into the speaker and promised him I would be there, leaving Alaric completely stunned on the other end. I've always drawn a sharp line between love and hate. If I dislike you, you basically don't exist to me. So I've always fiercely boycotted him. Alaric paused before letting out a quiet ah. But the guy recovers insanely fast. He hid his shock in almost a fraction of a second, asking softly if I knew the address. It's right across from little Seraphina's old school. He asked if she'd brought me there before, making me sneer inside. A sacred place packed with childhood memories. Why on earth would Seraphina ever bring me to a place like that? So I told him flatly that she never had. Just send the address, I'll go alone. He gasped. She never brought you there? Even though it was a rhetorical question, I immediately caught Alaric's fleeting moment of quiet, smug satisfaction. He suggested asking Seraphina to pick me up. Talk about a manipulator. I narrowed my eyes, telling him it wasn't necessary. There's absolutely no need to order my girlfriend around to fetch me. Instantly, the line went dead silent. It took a second before Alaric started apologizing, claiming he was sorry, and definitely didn't mean it that way. Of course, his loud apology caught the attention of everyone around him. I heard Seraphina's muffled voice, probably defending him like she always does. Saying it was pretty noisy there, he promised to WeChat me the location. He hung up right after. He's always playing this game, starting a quiet war just so he can heroically step in as the peacemaker. He truly acts like their patron saint. It arrived instantly. Clutching my phone, I stared at the sickly, pale reflection in the mirror and whispered my own name, Caspian. If you're so insanely good at making people miserable, why not put that talent to excellent use? I stared at the mirror and grinned. Look at that wicked smirk. The reflection smiled back, radiating absolute malice. This was exactly the chaos they were begging for. My failing body wouldn't let me drive anymore, so I just hailed a cab and headed straight to Alaric's address. Outside, the sky hung incredibly dark and heavy, practically begging to unleash a massive downpour. Leaning against the door, I watched the endless traffic rushing through the gloomy city. The window reflected my carefully styled, sharp face. Thick eyeliner hid my sickly paleness. With sharp, dark eyebrows and intense eyes, I looked almost like a sculpted statue. The cab finally pulled up near the block right outside their old school, but it couldn't go any further because of the narrow streets. My shoes stepped out onto the damp pavement. Before driving off, The cabbie poked his head out and told me in a thick accent that there's no hurdle a handsome lad like me can't overcome. Thanking him warmly, I forced my expression to soften and flashed the driver a bright, genuine smile. He grinned back, saying I looked way more handsome when I smiled, even better looking than those famous celebrities. Smiling back, I waved warmly to his departing car as he drove off. It was only the second time a complete stranger had shown me any warmth. Just this tiny shred of kindness was enough to make me feel incredibly happy inside. Inhaling the heavy, damp air, I slowly walked toward the target address. My heels clicked slowly against the pavement. Every few steps, I literally had to stop and rest. This sickness wasn't just extremely painful, it was aggressively draining my entire life force. By the time I painfully made it up the stairs, loud laughter was already echoing through the door. Seraphina and Alaric were childhood sweethearts, after all. They shared a tight childhood circle. It is an impossible circle for any outsider to break into. Just listen to them in there laughing, teasing, and happily sharing all those golden childhood memories. Suddenly, a brutal, stabbing pain shot through my stomach, making it almost impossible to stand up straight. Cold sweat drenched my forehead. I didn't rush in. I just stood outside, listening to their joy until the agonizing pain eased up enough for me to ring the doorbell. Dead silence. Then, footsteps approached. Alaric opened it. I'm naturally quite a handsome, rugged guy, and dressing up today made me look incredibly sharp. Instinctively, Alaric glanced down at the messy paint stains on his own clothes and tightly pursed his lips. But, like the master actor he is, he quickly forced a smile and stepped aside. He welcomed me in, saying I looked incredibly energetic today. Hearing that, Seraphina quickly walked out from the back. Maybe she hadn't seen me looking this handsome in quite a while, because a sudden flash of awe crossed her eyes. She asked why I hadn't called her to pick me up, but I could tell she was pretty thrilled I showed up. I just tilted my head and smiled. Welcoming me inside, Seraphina stepped forward and reached out to hold my hand. I looked down and saw matching watches on their wrists. Her blue one, Alaric's black one. A pretty perfect fit, really. Seeing me, look, Alaric quickly tried to explain, telling me not to get the wrong idea, they just got them cheap at the mall. His sudden excuse made her look down at her own wrist, her face immediately going quite dark. Just cheap watches for the hosts. I stayed completely quiet, putting on a forced smile, looking like the victim. I stayed totally quiet. Usually, whenever Alaric was around, I would be ready to pick a massive fight. They had never seen me this quiet. It threw both of them off completely, and Seraphina especially was confused. I knew exactly how much she loved looking at me, and which expressions worked best on her. Our old, playful couple banter was now nothing more than a weapon I designed to use against her. With a sigh, Seraphina stepped closer and took my hand. She is not very tall. Look at this move right here. She looks up with those watery eyes, looking so pitiful. We were doing so well, she says. But my smile just grew wider. Fine, let's make up, I said, taking a step forward to pull her in. Right next to us, Alaric instantly went stiff. Showing this sudden soft side of mine made Seraphina incredibly happy. She wrapped her arms around me, patting my back like she always did, but then frowned slightly, asking why I had lost so much weight. She told me to come inside because of my bad stomach, mentioning Alaric ordered pizza. Alaric quickly agreed, telling me to join. He said Caspian must be starving, inviting me to try his cooking while dragging me away from her arms to swap places. What would I do back then? I would have violently ripped my hand away, but instead, I just flipped my grip and grabbed his arm right back, agreeing. This friendly move made his arm lock up immediately. He tried to pull away by reflex, but forced himself to stop. The smell of my cologne still drifted from her. I always loved wearing this sauvage scent when the weather turned cold. The spicy pepper note was pretty unique. She lifted her hand to speak, but we had already walked away. Standing there, she sniffed the air, sighed with relief, and let out a soft smile. Seraphina works as a designer, and she started a studio with a friend right after graduation. She is young, highly creative, and has her own distinct style. She quickly built up a reputation in the scene, gaining a pretty solid following on her social media pages. In fact, the entire redesign of Alaric's studio was her personal masterpiece. A modern industrial look with lots of metal and wood, giving off a very trendy, personalized vibe the second you walk in. It suited his tech guru image completely, featuring a huge smart standing desk she custom designed just for him. Alaric posted a picture of it online and made sure to tag Seraphina. In the shot, she looked so professional and focused, making followers rave about her talent, with some even asking if she was his girlfriend. Alaric just replied with a silly face, saying no. But right now, several people were gathered around that exact desk. They were all her old childhood friends, and they had already destroyed most of the pizzas on the table. Empty bottles littered the floor, and everyone gave me mixed looks the moment I stepped inside. One girl with a major attitude stood out immediately. It was Alara, Seraphina's best friend since they were kids. She had watched their entire history play out. Back in high school, when her parents moved away for work, Alaric was the one who helped her through that rough time. She also saw how depressed and broken Seraphina became when Alaric left the country for a college exchange program. To her, they were meant to be together, not me. I just glanced her way and ignored her completely. No one wants their girl's best friend acting like a controlling relative. My cold attitude made Alara absolutely furious. She slammed her cup down, complaining that young Master Caspian always made everyone wait around, which I found pretty funny. Pointing at the half-eaten food, I asked if anyone actually waited. Her face froze right up. She went to argue, but Seraphina stepped in from behind, telling us both to cut it out. Our constant fighting always gave Seraphina a major headache, so she was used to playing peacemaker. She pulled me down to sit right beside her, and the moment I did, she handed me a massive plate. On it were some slices of my favorite beef pizza, and she gave me a napkin, saying she saved them just for me. She said she kept them untouched in advance. Another friend teased that she specifically picked this type out just for me. That teasing from her friend made Seraphina pretty uncomfortable. Alara rolled her eyes and dismissed it as pure nonsense. Meanwhile, I just grabbed a slice of pizza and shoved it in my mouth. Seraphina turned to look at me, her lips gently rising into a soft smile. But because of my recent meds, my mouth was constantly bitter. That greasy pizza tasted somehow even worse as I chewed. Just 2 bites in, a massive wave of nausea suddenly hit me. I gagged. Everyone at the table turned to stare, but I couldn't care less about them. I slammed my plate down, covered my mouth, and bolted upright. My chair screeched harshly against the floor as I stood. Seraphina called out to me, but I couldn't stop. I just ran, desperately searching for a bathroom. I crashed right into Alaric, who was carrying drinks out of the kitchen. He yelped as sticky juice spilled everywhere. I quickly mumbled an apology. Mumbling a quick sorry, I rushed into the bathroom, fell over the toilet, and threw up. Outside, it was already complete chaos. Seraphina stared at the stains on Alaric's shirt and his bruised shoulder, pressing her lips tightly together without uttering a single word of complaint. She quickly rinsed his hand, feeling heartbroken over the red swelling on his shoulder. Alara leaned back and sneered, claiming she thought Caspian had actually grown up by now. Mocking me, she sneered that I must have just taken a master class in cheap, manipulative drama, making Seraphina look even worse. Wincing in visible pain, Alaric forced himself to say he simply didn't see Caspian coming. Naturally, Seraphina thought Alaric was just being way too kind, trying to excuse my bad behavior. Her eyes welled with tears, and the studio housewarming party ground to an abrupt halt. Her friends took the hint and quickly bolted, leaving only Alara standing there with crossed arms, glaring at the door. She mocked me for being a coward. Her toxic mouth was always directed at me. Usually, Seraphina would step in to defuse the situation, but now she just lowered her head, protectively holding on to Alaric. She told him she was taking him to the hospital. Right as she spoke, the bathroom door swung open, and I dragged myself out drenched in cold sweat, having emptied my stomach. My body was so weak I could barely stand. Though I heard Alara's nasty comments, I ignored her entirely, clinging to the doorframe to stare at Seraphina. She just turned her head away, refusing to even look at me. Instead, she walked right into the bedroom, grabbed a coat, and gently draped it over Alaric. Supporting his waist, she basically bore his entire weight as she guided him slowly toward the front door. Alaric looked incredibly pale, leaning on her with his eyes tightly closed. I must have looked absolutely pathetic right then. Pathetic enough that Alara actually scoffed at me. Seraphina helped him walk away without ever turning around, completely ignoring me. Can you believe this absolute blind spot? Just by listening to a few rumors, she immediately handed down my guilty verdict. I could only stare blankly at the door she had just walked through. I couldn't tell if my body or my heart hurt more. As I bent double, Alara told me to stop acting. I slowly raised my head and shot her a deeply piercing look, forcing her to finally notice my sweat-drenched hair and my incredibly pale, bloodless lips. Terrified by my bloodshot eyes and ghostly appearance, Alara panicked and asked if I was seriously not feeling well. Finally, realizing something was genuinely wrong, she stepped forward to help me, asking what happened. I slapped her hand away, slowly dragging my feet step by step to grab my bag from the room. Those few short flights of stairs took me a whole half hour to descend. Now, Alara's toxic mouth couldn't spit out another single syllable, and she just silently followed me like a lost stray cat, timidly trailing behind my weak footsteps. Standing by the empty roadside, there wasn't a single cab around. Alara slowly walked up and cautiously looked at me before speaking. She asked if I hadn't driven and offered to take me to the hospital as I stood by the complex's rusty gates. Everything was dead silent, with only a flickering street lamp crackling overhead. In a nearby dirty ditch, a tiny paper boat floated. I stared blankly at it, drifting aimlessly in the stinky sewage. Standing under that light in my heavy coat, I looked dangerously frail. Clearly terrified by my awful state, Alara offered to call Seraphina to make her come back if I wouldn't let her drive. "Don't ruin your own health," she begged, asking why I kept refusing to go inside. I thought to myself that I had no choice, because the cards left in my hand were so few. Using these people much more logically is the goal. I look up at Alara, and she instantly gets defensive, claiming she is only showing concern. I ask how she could falsely accuse me like that. Alara freezes, looking away, muttering that it was not exactly a false accusation. She cannot finish her sentence. But getting someone like her to actually lower her head and apologize to me? Absolutely impossible. I say, "Take me to the hospital." Instantly, she lets out a massive sigh of relief. It is as if helping me this once magically washes away all the garbage she spewed, leaving her guilt-free. She will not have to carry even an ounce of moral guilt. She hurriedly turns around to grab her car. Leaning against the doorframe, I narrow my eyes at Alara's retreating back. She returns incredibly fast, stopping her car right in front of me. Climbing inside, the warm temperature slowly stops my violent shivering. Neither of us speaks as the car rolls out of the narrow old street. Finally, she breaks the silence, asking if my stomach hurts. She offers to take me to the People's Hospital, remembering my stomach condition is pretty severe. Accelerating slightly, she presses the gas, but when I tell her to drive to the oncology hospital, she slams on the brakes. Believe me, her face is priceless. Tires screech harshly against the asphalt. She urgently tells me not to make such stupid jokes. Looking at her, I merely give a faint smile. I have been living there for almost half a month. The car goes dead silent. The stereo plays a soft old song while a light rain begins to drizzle outside the window. In a dry, hoarse voice, she asks if I am actually serious. I tell her I am not joking. Alara is gorgeous, but she always oozes this profound stupidity. Her mouth hangs slightly open, staring at me like someone who is completely, truly dumb to the core. I look away from her, desperately fighting the strong urge to start mocking this idiot again. With a raspy voice, she asks what the illness is, how bad it is, and if Seraphina knows. "Late-stage liver cancer," I reply. I lock my eyes on her face, using a very serious tone to tell her Seraphina has no idea, and I do not plan on letting her know. Before she can react, I continue. "I came today just to see her one last time before breaking up. I do not want to drag her down, so I wanted to let her and Alaric be together." Staring into the distance, I completely empty my mind so I do not literally throw up from my own disgusting, dramatic script. Alara suddenly gets emotional, claiming I would not be dragging her down. According to her, as long as I actively seek treatment, everything will be fine. Her intense reaction is quite unexpected, surprising me. She bites her lip and looks away. Ultimately, I say nothing else, only whispering for her to take me back to the hospital. The car starts back up. Only this time, she drives much slower. Once we arrive, Alara insists on walking me back to my room. Perhaps she just wants to verify if I am actually sick. I do not refuse. This easily manipulated Alara could actually be quite useful. The long hospital corridors are incredibly quiet. Every now and then, the beep of heart monitors echoes from behind a few cracked open doors. Other times, patients are heard groaning in pain through the night. Alara clamps her jaw shut and stays silent. I raise an eyebrow, asking if she is actually scared. Alara presses her lips into a thin, tight line. She tells me that if I confess this is all a joke right now, she won't even be mad. She stares, waiting for me to call it a prank, as if she genuinely cares that much. Smiling, I reply that I would love to tell her it is a joke, too. I push open the heavy door of my room at the end of the hall, adding that unfortunately, it is not. My ward is a double room with its own bathroom. The other bed next to mine is completely empty. The moment Alara steps inside, she notices the photo wall on the left. Pinned up are various sports pictures, family portraits of me with my late parents, and some motivational quotes. The staff actually let me hang them up, because the room is so warm. I go ahead and take off my heavy coat. According to the doctor, keeping a strong will to live is a very good thing. Now watch her reaction. Alara wants to say something, but then she spots the massive clumps of hair in my trash can. Trembling violently, she immediately tries to bolt outside. She insists on calling Seraphina, but I beg her not to tell her, calling it my plea. Honestly, letting Seraphina find out the truth right now would just be far too boring. If I can actually survive this, I want to stand before that woman in perfect health and slap her, rather than but if I die, everything I am setting up right now will absolutely guarantee she spends the rest of her life in pure misery. I want to be the haunting phantom right outside her window, just to see what it feels like to torture her day and night. And as for Alaric and this trembling Alara standing right in front of me, why should I die so young while they get to live perfectly fine lives? Caspian is just that kind of guy. He repays every favor, but he settles his scores twice as hard. With that in mind, I looked at Alara with pure sincerity, softening my voice to tell her that keeping this secret was best for everyone. Alora clenched her fists, asking if I thought this was some tragic movie romance where the male lead suffers in silence. I cut off her dramatic nonsense, reminded her how she just falsely accused me a second ago. Realizing what she had just said and done, Alora looked down in pure shame. I quietly told her that this was her way of paying me back. I had been with Seraphina for 6 years, so I knew exactly how to handle her best friend's dramatic temper. Guilt is the ultimate weapon against someone like Alora. After hearing my words, she hesitated, clearly torn inside. She finally agreed. Are you surprised? Because she actually kept her promise and did not say a word to Seraphina. But from that day on, she basically lived in my hospital room. Her constant nagging about eating or being cold drove me crazy. Still, I had to put up with it since I engineered this whole guilt trip. She begged me to eat just a little more. She reminded me that I did not hate broccoli, handing me a bowl of special porridge her nanny made after consulting my doctors. It was honestly surreal sitting here peacefully with Alora, listening to her speak so softly as she coaxed me to eat some warm food. The treatment was conservative. For someone in my condition, the goal was simple: manage the pain and stretch out whatever time I had left. I kept a tiny notebook to meticulously log every single meal, balancing my intake of water, proteins, fruits, and fresh vegetables. Not a single detail. But no matter how hard I forced it down, the brutal chemo nausea and splitting headaches haunted me day and night. Anything I managed to swallow would come straight back up. Through all this relentless torture, I was wasting away to nothing. My hair was falling out in massive clumps, and the face staring back at me in the mirror grew completely unrecognizable. Seraphina actually called me once during this time, but hung up after just 3 rings and never tried calling back. I knew exactly what she wanted. She was waiting for me to break down, swallow my pride, and crawl back to hold her hand again. Back when I still loved her, I really did spoil that girl way too much. When another huge clump of hair ended up on my pillow, I watched Alora quietly hide it and throw it in the trash. I knew she was secretly researching liver cancer too, completely abandoning the design studio she was supposed to be running with Seraphina. She spent her days running around to different specialists with my medical records in hand. During this time, Alora completely disappeared from Seraphina and Alaric's social media accounts, which had fans asking where the other pretty girl went. Seraphina cheerfully replied that Alora was probably too busy dating, but I knew the truth. That girl was forced to watch me slowly slide closer to my inevitable end every single day. She was eating herself alive with guilt, while online, clueless fans were just thrilled to get a reply from their favorite creator. They started asking when she and Alaric would finally make things official. Seraphina stayed silent, but I secretly loved reading that question. I really wanted to know too. Wouldn't you? Like, when is she finally going to end things with me? I waited over a month, but instead of a breakup call, she invited me to join a dinner party celebrating Alaric's birthday. When the big day arrived, I slipped out of my hospital room before Alora could show up. I had a few things to take care of first, so I stopped by a high-end barbershop to get a quick trim and a clean shave. The young, incredibly cool barber gently massaged my scalp, cautiously asking me if the pressure was all right as he worked. His voice sounded incredibly hesitant, and honestly, looking pale as a ghost, I did not blame him. I just closed my eyes. Mid-shave, I heard him gasp in shock. I knew more of my hair had just fallen out, and he immediately apologized, sounding totally helpless. Just chemo side effects. I jokingly told him I actually wanted their absolute best master barber to shave it all off, so he should grab their top guy. My self-deprecating humor did not make him laugh. He just stayed completely silent. A second later, he quietly walked out, leaving me wondering if he was actually going to fetch their top stylist for me. As I walked to the front, I noticed everyone staring at me strangely before a stylist welcomed me over to a chair. A master barber, sporting a thin mustache and looking like a famous Hollywood star, greeted me with incredible enthusiasm. The freezing cold razor glided smoothly across my scalp, sending clumps of hair raining down onto the dark floor. Even knowing this day would come, I still closed my eyes in heartbreak as the barber kindly noted that handsome guys look good bald anyway. Even bald, this guy looks pretty stylish. Then, I opened my eyes. Maybe the fresh shave actually did some wonders, because the bald guy staring back in the mirror wasn't nearly as bad as I thought. I looked up and gave the barber a smile. He really was a master of his craft. I pulled out the hat I brought along and put it on. I carefully checked my look from every single angle. Suddenly, it wasn't just the barber watching. The other people in the shop started crowding around me too. Honestly, all their non-stop compliments made me feel a bit self-conscious. When I paid, they even hooked me up with a huge discount, standing in a neat row by the door to shout their thanks and goodbye. I waved back with just as much energy. Man, whose handsome boy is this? Just born naturally dashing, I whispered to my reflection with a smug grin. Then my phone started ringing. It was Alara. Where on earth did you go? Alara asked, sounding incredibly anxious. You are not in your room, and you are not answering my calls. Today was actually her birthday. I told her I just went out to buy a hat, but Alaric cautiously asked why I did not just skip the dinner. I had told her not to pick me up, so when my cab pulled up to the exclusive restaurant Alaric booked, she was just standing by the curb smoking. Right in front of her, the trash can ashtray was absolutely overflowing with cigarette butts. When she saw me step out of the car all dressed up, Alara completely froze in place. Her throat bobbed slightly as she swallowed hard, and after a tense second, she slowly walked over to me. "Why are you wearing so little?" she asked. Talk about loving to micromanage my life. I rolled my eyes mentally, but kept a polite smile. "Obviously to look good," I replied. Alara seemed a bit speechless, pausing before admitting that it did actually look quite nice. "Do you want me to hold on to you?" she asked, already reaching her hand out toward me. But I quickly took a half step back. "Otherwise, when Seraphina sees us, you are going to have a pretty hard time explaining yourself." Hearing that, Alara froze instantly. It took a long time before she lowered her head and pulled back. We walked inside, with Alara slightly ahead of me, heading straight to the private room Alaric reserved. Loud, cheerful laughter was already echoing from within. I didn't care since I was used to this, but the moment we reached the door, Alara's face completely darkened. The second I pushed the door open, the entire room fell dead silent. Seeing me there, Seraphina looked shocked, but a sudden flash of joy crossed her face. She instantly stood up from Alaric's side, but then she seemed to remember his recent injury, and her steps froze. Right then, the smile on Alaric's face completely vanished. Talk about absolute hypocrisy. He's the one who invited me, yet he's the one looking pissed. Don't you just love people like that? Right as I was looking for the perfect word to describe him, a chubby girl with a constant grin stood up from her seat. "Look who finally showed up together," she teased. The latecomers have to down 3 penalty cups. Without even waiting for a response, she poured the drinks herself and slid them right in front of me. I raised an eyebrow, ready to turn them down, but before I could speak, Alaric stepped right up and downed every single cup. "Caspian cannot drink," she declared, instantly making the whole room feel incredibly tense. If our arriving together earlier was just a simple coincidence, what she just said made things look pretty suspicious to everyone in that room. Seraphina's eyes darted back and forth between us several times. Her hand began to tremble as her face turned completely pale. Thankfully, Alaric, being his usual understanding self, stepped in to break the ice. "Sit right here." He walked right over and wrapped his arm around mine like we were best friends, completely ignoring our previous clash. Then, he practically dragged me over to sit right beside him. That was when I realized he was actually live streaming. Just like that, I was suddenly pushed right into the center of Alaric's broadcast. He had several hundred viewers watching his stream live. Every single word we said was captured on camera, making the drama-loving viewers go wild. Some in the chat even asked if I was Alara's boyfriend. But the moment my actual face finally popped up on the screen, the entire comment section went completely quiet, in utter disbelief. They complained about my look, writing that my chin was so incredibly sharp it could literally plow a whole field. Harsh comments kept flooding the chat non-stop, especially since Alaric's stream was running a pretty heavy beauty filter. Having gotten pretty skinny lately, that camera filter made my chin look absolutely terrifying and sharp. My eyes even looked as big as an alien's. Alaric acted all offended, asking the chat what on earth they were talking about. He claimed I was super handsome, then proceeded to put his arm over my shoulder in a fake display of friendship. Side by side, Alaric looked incredibly handsome and bright, while I looked like some kind of monster. The chat quickly filled with mockery. They told viewers not to look right. Honestly, comparison is pretty brutal, right? I wanted to reach out and shut off his stream's beauty filter right then, but Alaric grabbed my hand. Just as he did, a loud argument broke out across the room. I looked up. Seraphina was standing just a few feet away, confronting Alora with a wine glass in her hand. "Who do you think you are, drinking for him?" Alora just stood right in front of me, keeping her mouth shut. This was easily the very first time these lifelong best friends had ever actually fought like this. A sudden wave of sweet revenge washed over me. When you care too much, suspicion will always poison a friendship. "Caspian, you are late today." Seraphina glared at me, wineglass in hand, her usually sweet face looking incredibly dark. She shoved Alora away from me. "Caspian," Alora tried to defend me, but stopped herself and suddenly changed her story. "Caspian has stomach issues, didn't you know, Seraphina? How long has it been since you even called him? When was the last time you actually cared about him?" Alora just has this naturally fiery temper. For once, I wasn't the target of her anger. Instead, she was standing right there, protecting me. This actually felt pretty good, but Seraphina was absolutely fuming. "Do you even know what the hell you are doing? I know exactly what I am saying and doing, and you will regret this." Alora fired back without hesitation, while I casually spoke up. "What is the big deal? Alora and I are just friends." My words completely shattered Seraphina's calm. In the past, Alora and I were always at each other's throats, Constant arguments, day in and day out. But now, calling her a friend showed just how much things had changed. Meanwhile, Alaric glanced over at his active live stream. Guys, stop fighting. You two are best friends. Alaric looked over at me, using those signature puppy dog eyes to beg me silently. Caspian, I know you were mad when Seraphina took me to the hospital, but please stop this. Alaric's words made the chat go completely wild. The chat was losing its mind, screaming about catching a cheater live on camera. They called me a homewrecker, and the comments went completely crazy attacking me. Some viewers fell for Alaric's act and started hurling massive abuse at me. So the reason handsome Alaric stopped streaming before was because this absolute trash guy hurt his hand. He got mad just because beautiful Seraphina took handsome Alaric to the hospital? What right does he have? He is so cheap. Within seconds, the fans watching Alaric's birthday stream started spamming the exact same hateful message over and over. Go die, trash guy. I just watched without saying a word. A wave of hateful comments flashed across the screen like a river of blood right before my eyes. I stayed silent, slowly looking down at the floor. Alaric faked a panicked look, quickly apologized to his viewers, and abruptly cut the feed after starting a war. Classic Alaric move. Once I knew the stream was off, I looked up at him and asked what I did. Caspian, but before he could finish, I slapped him hard across the face. The entire room went dead silent. They all stared in shock at Alaric clutching his cheek. I was so weak from being sick that the slap barely even moved his hair. Man, hitting someone that weakly is honestly so unsatisfying. Watch this before anyone could react. I raised my hand again, and Seraphina charged over like a mad lioness. She grabbed my bony wrist with both hands, demanding to know why I was doing this. She looked completely broken and furious. For a second, I actually felt a bit scared she might hit me back, but I quickly shook it off. I raised my other hand and slapped her too. She is pretty short. My hand connected with her cheek. She never expected me to actually hit her, and her face showed pure disbelief. She still had no clue what was really going on. In the past, I loved her with my whole heart. Now, I just thought she was incredibly stupid. Suddenly, Alaric let out a cry and rushed to grab me. Do not hit her. I pretended to swing again, making Seraphina finally react. Terrified I would hit Alaric, she violently shoved my arm away. My weak body stumbled back, but someone caught me. It was Alora. While Seraphina shielded Alaric behind her, Alora held me up. These two childhood best friends stood face to face in a fierce standoff, both believing they were completely in the right. Seraphina glared at Alora's hand holding me, clenching her teeth in anger. How could you do this to me? How are we wrong? I bit my lip, barely holding back a smirk. Seraphina, Alora, and I are just friends, so why can't you believe me? Back then, when I questioned Seraphina, she used those exact same words. Too bad she didn't remember that now. Like a wild beast, she charged at Alora with bloodshot eyes, and Alora took a brutal slap protecting me. The two of them started brawling, and Alora quickly shoved me out of the way. I lost my footing, twisted my ankle, and leaned against the wall, watching the table of food crash down. Nobody in the room could separate them. I just stood there, watching coldly, while Alaric stared in absolute shock. Amidst the chaos, I whispered in a voice only he could hear, telling him they were doing this for me. Talk about a brutal reality check, he looked totally crushed by those words. The restaurant security guards finally broke up the brutal fight, leaving me standing alone near the stairs. I watched Seraphina walk out with blood dripping from her lip, her expensive clothes completely trashed and wrinkled. She was holding up Alaric, whose hand was bleeding from a broken wine bottle. Seeing me, her jaw tightened. Almost as if she wanted revenge, she pulled Alaric close, wrapping him tightly in her arms to hurt me. I just blinked, showing absolutely no emotion. But as they brushed past me, I reached my hand out to her. Resting in my open palm was a simple ring. A year ago, Seraphina handcrafted this herself and gave it to me. Back then, I was so happy I felt like I had the whole world. But she just said throw it away. Seraphina walked away without even glancing back. The window next to me was open, so I casually tossed it out. The faintly gleaming ring spun in the air before landing in the dark grass of the restaurant garden below. A long time passed after they left before Alora finally emerged. She was pretty badly beaten up, tears streaming down. Her eyes were swollen red. Spotting me, she hung her head to wipe her cut lip, muttering complaints under her breath. I really owe you big time, Caspian. I wanted to laugh, and I actually did. But the next second, the room spun wildly and I completely blacked out. The last thing I remember was Alara rushing over to catch me. After Alaric's birthday, even though I fought with everything I had, my health still took a rapid, terrifying dive. By the time the very first snow of winter coated the bare branches, I could barely lift myself out of bed. Every morning, I just celebrated being alive for one more day. My face was paper pale, eyes deeply sunken, as the heart monitor kept up its steady, hollow beeping. A bit noisy. Then came a soft knock, and some kids slipped inside. The room instantly filled with lively energy. I kept just enough savings for myself and donated the rest to the hospital. It wasn't a massive fortune, but it was enough to make a real difference for kids just like these. They even brought a cake to see me. Propping myself up on 2 pillows, I barely managed to sit and listen to them sing. Standing off to the side, Nurse Jung was recording the whole sweet moment on her phone. As she recorded, her eyes welled up. She quickly turned her back, trying to wipe the tears from her face. "Big brother, you have to keep fighting," the little birthday boy whispered, gently squeezing my cold hand. He told me if I ate candy after my medicine, it wouldn't hurt anymore. I tried to speak, but my lips were incredibly dry. It hurt like hell to stretch them. Nurse Jung cut the cake, and I licked a tiny bit of frosting from a fork. Imagine not being able to taste anything. My senses were just completely gone by then. But seeing a child grow another year older made me happy. I turned my head and noticed someone standing just outside the half-open door. As my life force slipped away bit by bit, she seemed more and more terrified to actually face me. Auntie Wang, my caregiver, told me Alara often hid in the stairwell smoking alone. I knew she was trying her best. Deep down, I felt pretty bad for dragging her into my tragic mess. After all, she wasn't some evil monster, but regret was totally useless now. There was simply no stopping it. The least I could do was treat her a bit better, so I called out Alara. "Are you out there?" She stepped inside awkwardly, with deep dark circles, smelling of smoke as Nurse Jung told the kids it was time to leave. Sensing the situation, Nurse Jung gently ushered the children out, leaving behind 2 slices of birthday cake. Alara carefully arranged some fresh sunflowers into the vase by my bed. I used to buy flowers for myself every day, but once she discovered that, she started bringing me a fresh bouquet herself, before sitting down on the stool beside me. I could tell immediately that she was trying to hide something. "Are Seraphina and Alaric getting married?" I asked, cutting right through her lie. She jerked her head up, shocked. "Look, I am hospitalized, not living in a cave." Alara's face fell. "Didn't I tell you to stay off your phone?" Seraphina and Alaric officially announced their marriage on social media. A ton of people flooded my messages, cursing me out as a shameless scumbag. On the day of Alaric's birthday, that short broadcast video packed with an insane amount of drama skyrocketed straight to the trending list. A few smart people figured out from old videos that I was Seraphina's real boyfriend, but they were quickly drowned out by a tidal wave of hate. I went ahead and used a burner account to leak my own handle. That night, I gained 200,000 hate followers. My inbox completely exploded with endless, toxic abuse. Alaric posted a few sketchy explanation videos while Seraphina stayed dead silent, acting like she did not even exist. Angry netizens aimed all their real-life frustrations directly at me, and you will not believe the utterly toxic nickname they gave me: the ugliest homewrecker. Some streamers even started bashing me just to farm easy views. They spammed my inbox with awful insults while smugly asking their chats if they did the right thing. I just sat there and took it. I actually used Auntie Wang's relative's account to buy promotion spots and keep myself on the trending pages. Keeping the heat of this scandal alive was key. While everyone trashed me, they comforted Seraphina, sending her fame to the absolute moon. "They're getting married on New Year's Day, aren't they?" I asked as the dull ceiling light washed over my pale face. Alara stayed completely silent. Honestly, you didn't even have to look at her to know her expression was incredibly grim. After a long, heavy silence, she pulled a bright red wedding invitation from her pocket. "Seraphina gave this to me, asking to bring you along." Since their big fight, Alara and Seraphina had not spoken to each other in ages. It was hard to tell if this invitation was an olive branch or just a pure, petty provocation. Judging by Alara's furious look, it was definitely a slap in the face. She let out a dry laugh, remembering they got together on Alaric's birthday. Before I could say anything, she suddenly stood up, crying out that she felt so incredibly wrong. "This is so frustrating. How is this fair?" While I was getting torn apart online, Alara was suffering as the villain of their story too. I looked up at her, offering a gentle smile. "Alara, it is okay. We will get back everything they took." Right then, my caregiver, Auntie Wang, brought in some homemade lamb dumplings. She is incredibly sweet, hardworking, and neat. She always took amazing care of me, proudly mentioning she made them because her own son absolutely loves this recipe. Gently spooning one up, she brought it to my lips, telling me I had to eat dumplings on the winter solstice to protect my ears next year. After hearing her warm blessing, I thanked her and took a bite of the hot dumpling. I chewed slowly, but my mouth was so bitter that I tasted absolutely nothing. Still, I smiled, telling her they were delicious. "Lamb filling is the best," I lied. Her eyes crinkled happily as she offered me more. Right then, my phone started ringing. Alara was on the line, driving and excitedly rambling about bringing over some famous, viral crab rotang yuan she just bought. She complained about waiting 3 hours in line for them, but everyone insisted they are a must-have comfort food this winter. Supposedly, they bring good luck. She warned me not to fall asleep before she arrived. Drive safely, I told her quietly. It is snowing heavily out there, so be careful. Hanging up, I put the plate of dumplings aside. While Auntie Wang washed the dishes, I lay back on my bed and watched the thick snow swirling outside the cold window. Instinctively, feeling the end drawing near, I pulled my favorite basketball plushie close to my chest. Curling my body up like a baby, I thought of the funeral arrangements I had already set up, from my cemetery plot to the endless ghost money I bought for my afterlife. I was honestly terrified of becoming a broke, forgotten ghost in the underworld. Even so, I prepared gift toys and lucky envelopes in advance for all the sweet kids staying in this pediatric ward. As for my apartment, I willed it to Alara. She does not need the money, but at least she will have a physical memory of me. It is just a shame I will never get to taste those tengyuan she bought. My mind slowly drifted as my physical agony finally faded away. A wave of warmth washed over me, leaving me feeling completely weightless, like I was drifting on a soft cloud. I desperately searched my fading mind for some deep, final words. But honestly, who was even there to hear them? There was nobody. I simply squeezed my basketball plushie tight against my chest, feeling my heart slow down. Taking one final glance at the winter snow, I thought about what a beautiful wedding day it was for Seraphina and Alaric. Ever since that birthday incident, those two had masterfully played the victim to farm an absolute mountain of online clout. From the moment they announced their wedding date, the public attention stayed absolutely sky high. So, Alaric decided to livestream the whole thing. He wanted to pull in views while announcing to the entire world that Seraphina was finally his. Dressed in a sharp white suit, he sat in front of his camera, sharing his love story with the viewers. Pointing to a table, he explained it was actually made from his old family study. He talked about how little Seraphina was always losing her keys, so she would knock on his door to study together. As Alaric reminisced, the chat exploded with excited comments about how incredibly sweet and cute they were. Everyone was totally shipping them. But then, a viewer noticed the time and asked if he should be heading out to pick up the bride. Realizing the time, Alaric got visibly excited. He could barely hide his anticipation, a huge grin spreading across his face, which only made the chat tease him more. But wait, the bride herself is definitely not in a celebratory mood right now, as her wedding car heads down the highway. Seraphina sat in the back, a bright red rose bouquet right beside her, while she chain-smoked one cigarette after another. Thick smoke drifted out of the cracked window. Behind the wheel was her chubby, usually cheerful friend Barnaby, trying to keep his composure. He gripped the steering wheel, glancing in the rearview mirror at Seraphina, puffing away like crazy. He gently reminded her that today was her big happy wedding day, but Seraphina just stared out the window, completely ignoring him. Barnaby finally snapped, telling her she was pregnant now and needed to start taking proper responsibility. He asked who she was wearing that funeral face for, being the oldest and usually the most tactful friend in their circle. Seeing her behave this way was enough to ruin his patience, finally making Seraphina turn her head toward him. She sobbed, insisting it was just a one-time mistake, a total accident, and that she had absolutely no romantic feelings for Alaric anymore. Sure, she once loved Alaric, but later, she had Caspian, so she truly only saw Alaric as a close friend now. Barnaby almost slammed on the brakes, asking if he was really just a friend. Then why did she always fight with Caspian over him? He asked what kind of person leaves their boyfriend of 6 years in the middle of the night just to walk around their old school with a friend. He pressed further, asking how long it had been since she even went home before her and Caspian split. In fact, had she gone back even once? With every question Barnaby threw her way, Seraphina slumped lower and lower. Holding her head in agony, she admitted she was just too terrified to return. Gritting her teeth, she confessed that the thought of Caspian and Alara being together made her so jealous she wanted to die. Barnaby, being a mutual friend to both her and Alara, swallowed the urge to ask where this sudden passion was before. It really was not his place to judge who betrayed who among the four of them, but he knew damn well that Seraphina was not innocent. She always had this strange, unshakable confidence. She honestly believed Caspian would just wait around for her forever, no matter how badly she acted. Talk about spoiled rotten. Even if he had no idea how Caspian and Alara, who were total opposites, ended up together, he felt Seraphina pretty much deserved this outcome. Disappointed in her, Barnaby let out a heavy sigh. He told her to just settle down and move on, since the past was the past. Their old childhood friendship had completely fallen apart. He stopped trying to talk sense into her, and Seraphina just lowered her head in silence. She tightly hugged the bouquet of roses. Soon, the entire ceremony went off without a hitch. Fully aware of the livestream, Seraphina forced a smile and hid her misery. But when they embraced, Alaric instantly detected the heavy scent of cigarettes. Staring at the bright red wedding decorations and her new husband, she was actually daydreaming about a completely different man. It was the wrong groom, and her bridesmaid group was missing a key person. She despised herself for being so pathetic. Alaric, however, was incredibly sharp when it came to reading people's hidden emotions. He felt her distant mood, but when she relaxed, holding up her dress barefoot inside the getaway car, he finally let out a tiny sigh of relief. As the car rolled forward, Alaric could not resist hugging her. Seeing her look so mature, completely past her youthful awkwardness, his heart began racing all over again. His gentle devotion, granting her every little whim, slowly started pulling her back into his arms. Reading the endless congratulations pouring onto his screen, Alaric smiled proudly. In his mind, his rival was now just a defeated opponent left far in the past. Then, right as Alaric is chatting happily with his stream, the car suddenly jerks to a violent halt. Alaric quickly shielded Seraphina, sending the livestream chat into another absolute frenzy of romantic support. While they both stood there confused, Barnaby peeked out, and his face turned totally pale. "Pull over for a second," he muttered. Seraphina was pretty annoyed. Since when does a wedding car pull over to yield to someone else? But soon enough, she learned the real reason. Down the long street came a massive convoy of pitch-black sedans. Every single mirror and hood was tied up with dark cloth flowers. It was a line of hearses. By custom, when a wedding car meets a hearse, the dead take priority. Seraphina's face fell instantly. On what was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, this felt like pretty bad luck. Someone in the livestream chat asked what was happening. Alaric explained that it was a hearse, and the dead take priority. "It is fine to yield," he said. The chat immediately praised his kind and understanding heart. The convoy of hearses from the far end of the street slowly crept forward. The lead car was moving at an incredibly slow pace. It was so slow, it almost felt like they were trying to start a fight. Alaric got pretty annoyed. Just as he was about to lean out and wave for them to speed up, he heard Barnaby stuttering behind him. "Wait, this is not right, that looks like Alora's car. Look at this." Seraphina completely froze, poked her head out the window, and her eyes went wide with pure shock. Alora, dressed in a formal black suit, sat in the driver's seat staring straight ahead. And right there on the hood hung a black and white photo. In the photo, a handsome young man with bright, piercing eyes was smiling right back. Seraphina's heart hammered wildly. "Are you kidding me with this joke?" she roared out, swearing. "Barnaby, open the door right now. Open it right now." It was not just Seraphina, even Barnaby was completely stunned by this absolutely wild twist. He reflexively unlocked the door. Alaric snapped back to reality and reached for Seraphina's hand, but he grabbed nothing but empty air. Seraphina always had an incredibly stubborn streak. Once she made up her mind, there was absolutely no turning back. Before, Caspian was always the one watching her walk away. This time, it was Seraphina's turn to run. "Alora!" Seraphina charged right up to the side of the car and pounded violently on the window. Alora did not stop, she actually sped up. Refusing to give up, she chased after the car, desperate to get her answers. According to local wedding customs, a bride's feet should never touch the ground on her big day, avoiding bad luck and ensuring a peaceful life. But Seraphina hiked up her heavy wedding dress, running barefoot straight through the dirty melting slush. Alaric ran right behind her, screaming for her to come back as the newlyweds tangled together in the middle of a muddy street. Watching this play out in her rearview mirror, Alora started laughing. "Caspian, did you see that? Right now, they look as completely miserable as stray cats." She hit the stereo, and a fast-paced rock song started blasting. Her fingers tapped out the fast beat on the steering wheel, keeping perfectly in rhythm. Heavy tears suddenly began rolling down her cheeks, splashing right onto her dark professional suit. Alora gripped the wheel tight, crying uncontrollably. "You cruel, heartless man," she sobbed. "Look, now I look like a sad stray cat, too." Seraphina could not catch up to Alora's car, but she pounded on the window of the car behind it, finally learning the devastating news of Caspian's death. Every single person in this funeral procession was actually a fellow cancer patient from Caspian's hospital. They had all come together voluntarily to send him off, and they knew his story pretty well. From his terrible liver cancer diagnosis to how he slowly withered away by the winter solstice, Seraphina just could not believe this was real. She convinced herself it was just a sick, elaborate prank. Caspian's final revenge, a massive joke. Ignoring everyone trying to hold her back, Seraphina forcefully kicked Barnaby out of her wedding car. She sped straight back to the apartment she once shared with Caspian, throwing the door open, fully expecting to see him sitting on the couch. Instead, she walked into absolute emptiness and pitch-black darkness. Every piece of furniture was covered in a pretty thin layer of dust. Clearly, no one had been back here in a long time. The broken pieces of their old ornaments still lay scattered across the floor. "Stop playing games with me," Seraphina screamed, dashing into the bedroom like a madwoman. It was completely empty, but right there, in the middle of the bed, lay her old diary. "Are you playing some guessing game with me?" she whispered. She let out a hysterical laugh. She remembered keeping that diary safe inside the drawer. Caspian must have taken it out. Maybe he left some surprise inside for her, and this whole thing was just a big prank. And here it is. Seraphina opened the diary and found his grand surprise. Tucked inside was a late-stage liver cancer medical report. The sudden, horrible realization made her entire body start shaking violently. Her teeth chattered loudly as she collapsed to her knees by the bed, pressing her forehead flat against the freezing cold floor. For a long time in the dead silence of that empty room, a woman sobbed in agony. An inhuman scream echoed through the quiet apartment. Online, the crazy story of the funeral hearse crashing into the wedding car was already trending everywhere. But another search term suddenly skyrocketed, the most heartbreaking plot twist of the entire year. How a toxic couple twisted the absolute truth. Now, an account under the name Caspian went completely public. Private videos once locked to only me were suddenly opened for the entire world. A long timeline of the boy's beautiful relationship showed him and his girlfriend traveling and kissing under a gorgeous mountain sunset. He clumsily tried to learn how to cook her favorite meals. Smiling brightly, he wore her handmade necklace like it was his treasure. But then came a terrifying stack of cancer diagnoses. The video showed the boy cheering himself up in front of the camera. He followed online lists to buy his own hospital supplies all by himself, decorating his room's bare walls with motivational quotes. He planned his meals with a nutritionist. And yet, his girlfriend never showed up once during his entire fight. But get this, when internet sleuths matched his medical timeline, they were stunned. They found out that while Caspian was suffering all alone in his hospital bed, his girlfriend was happily helping another guy remodel his studio, flirting with him on camera. The very last video on the account was a freezing cold official death certificate, a single brief obituary, and a signed organ donation agreement. While Caspian was being laid to rest, his ex-girlfriend was marrying another man, forcing outraged friends and strangers who knew him to speak out. From the security guard at his building, to oncology nurses, patients he quietly sponsored, and even his barber, everyone had a story to tell. As reporters kept digging, the beautiful truth about his kind life was slowly uncovered piece by piece. He was a sweet, generous organ donor and innocent victim. The internet completely exploded. The online trolls who once harassed Caspian immediately deleted their nasty videos and ran away. Others sent desperate messages to an inbox he would never read, but Alaric faced a different storm. The toxic hate he threw at Caspian was now bouncing straight back. Guided by hidden forces, people turned their guilt into absolute rage, attacking Alaric 10,000 times harder. He apologized and deleted his accounts, but his nightmare was far from over after his home address was leaked from his wedding stream. By nightfall, his front door was piled with funeral wreaths and paper effigies. Buckets of paint were splashed on his door, and non-stop harassment calls flooded his phone. His private messages were stuffed with vicious threats, leaving Alaric to hide inside his dark house, trembling like a leaf. He tried calling Seraphina, but her phone was disconnected. She had completely abandoned him. But hold on, one night, heavy rocks shattered his windows, with one direct hit right to his groin. When the ambulance arrived, Alaric's pants from the waist down were soaked in a terrifying crimson, dyed dark by the blood. The stairwell of his old apartment building was narrow and pitch black. Moving his stretcher was incredibly tough, but the streamers waiting outside his door were absolutely thrilled, just like hungry sharks smelling blood. Holding their active streaming phones high in their hands, they crowded around as Alaric grew pale as a sheet. Sweat soaked his clothes as wave after wave of excruciating agony forced out loud screams. "Stop filming, I beg you," he cried, his eyes filled with pure despair. He weakly tried to shield his face, hoping to hide his pathetic state, but those greedy streamers had absolutely no conscience. Cruel hands reached out, forcefully yanking away the hands Alaric used to cover his face, exposing his raw shame and absolute despair to the cameras. What goes around comes around, because God is watching. A cruel-looking streamer pointed his phone lens directly at the bloody area between Alaric's legs, zoom lens and all, zooming the camera all the way in as Alaric begged them to stop filming. His desperate screams echoed through the live stream, but the chat was only filled with heartless laughter. This was a sick, bloody carnival. By the time the sweating paramedics finally shoved Alaric into the ambulance, the stretcher was completely soaked in blood. Drip, drop. Thick blood slid right off the edge of the blue medical sheet. Smacking onto the ambulance floor, the blood spread like a dark flower, pooling into a sickening river. His face completely loses all color as he hears a masked nurse ask what the deal is with this guy Alaric. Have they ever heard about that old internet drama with the scumbag woman and the absolute trash guy? Breaking past that crowd of aggressive streamers was exhausting and beyond irritating. Fanning himself with his baseball cap, a man points at Alaric and calls him that exact trash guy, a single sentence that completely breaks him. With his head lolling to the side, Alaric instantly faints dead away. Sometime later, Alara brings a beautiful bouquet of sunflowers to the cemetery plot Caspian chose for himself, right next to where his parents rest. The air is damp from a fresh rain. Holding a large black umbrella, Alara arrives with some heavy news about two old acquaintances. Since Alaric quit the internet, he faced endless doxing and relentless cyberbullying. On the day he got hurt, countless people were live streaming right outside his door. Totally ignoring his desperate attempts to cover himself, the camera zoomed right in on the fresh blood pouring between his legs. All of his remaining dignity was crushed into dust that night, and the streamers blocking the door severely delayed his medical help. And get this, Alaric permanently lost his chance to ever become a father. When he finally woke up, his mind was completely shattered, and he spent his days talking to walls, whispering Seraphina's name. But through all of it, Seraphina never showed up. The very last time anyone spotted him, he was acting like a total lunatic in some dark bar, chugging drinks in a corner. Thinking about his miserable fate, a brief flash of sadness crosses Alara's face. Alaric always did the wrong things at the worst times. Shaking her head with a gentle smile, her slender fingers slowly trace Caspian's photo on the cold tombstone. She asks if he is satisfied now. Young Master Caspian, as a tiny sparrow lands on the tombstone to preen its wings. It flies off into the gray sky, leaving Alara standing there under her black umbrella for a very long time before walking away. Her high heels click against the stone path of the cemetery. Suddenly, she stops. A disheveled homeless woman is curled up in the weeds nearby, smelling of cheap alcohol. Alara looks away and keeps walking. Balancing her umbrella in one hand, she pulls out her phone to call the cemetery security office. She tells them there is a random drunk woman here to kick out. Alara glances back at the passed-out woman, refusing to let her ruin this peaceful place.